Alright, let's see about this speaker now. I already Alright, now let's see about reconing the speaker. I just checked the field coil and the output transformer, and they seem to be good resistance wise, so I'm going to proceed. One thing I'm a little confused by though is I've got a field coil here and two wires coming out, one of which goes to the primary side of this, and the other primary is on its own, so we've got three wires coming out. And those are the three you see on the schematic. Green and white, white and green. So the green is the one that just goes to the primary, and I did measure about 400 ohms. The white is the one that goes to both that field coil, and the green and white just goes to the field coil. So the field coil should be about 1,140 ohms, and I got in the ballpark of that. Alright, so that all makes sense. What I'm a little confused by is this stuff. So, instead of the voice coil going straight to the secondary on the output transformer, there's a loop in there, which may be what that number 41 is. I'm not sure. The schematic. So there's a loop that goes around inside where the field coil is. And it's this weird flat metallic, maybe it's copper, I don't know, with some sort of coating on it, and that is in series with the voice coil. So one side of the voice coil is right here, right into the secondary. Other side of the secondary goes over to this lug, which goes to that loop of metal, which wraps around the field coil, comes out around here, and that's the other side of the voice coil. Now that might be what I've heard referred to as a humbucking coil, which is there to reduce hum. That's my best guess. Regardless, don't just leave it alone. Now, as for this side, the spider is actually in worse shape than I realized, but I'm still going to attempt to salvage it, because otherwise I can't proceed, because I don't have a replacement for it. Either that type, or really they haven't made those in many years. The modern type is like this, but the only ones I have are much too large. So I'd have to order up a smaller one, or I suppose I found a suitable thick cardstock I could try punching out my own like that. But instead what I'm going to do is unsolder these two wires and take out this nut so I can pull this whole thing out. I'm going to try to stiffen that up with some glue, and there's a little tear there. I already put a little bit of glue on that, and I want to kind of mash it flat. So the problem with it is not only was there a tear in it here, but it was kind of mashed down. Might have been more shipping damage, I suppose. So if I get it out of here, I figure I can kind of soak some glue into it and maybe put some weight on it and try to get it into shape. And I'm going to use this tacky glue, which stays fairly flexible. Also, I guess Elmer's white glue, I've heard, can work fairly well. And while I wait for that to set up, I'm going to clean off the rim here and get all this old paper and glue off. And I've heard read many opinions online about what's the best glue to use for this outer edge of the metal to, well, originally would have been paper, but this kind of foam material. Well, I've had good luck with the tacky glue on repairing cones, and I've seen some people recommend the clear gel tacky glue, and I did use it on another speaker in the past, but that one was only separated in a couple areas, not completely disconnected, and it seemed to work alright, so that's what I'm going to go with. For other people recommend contact cement or service cement, and I've got both of those if need be. First thing though is I gotta get all this off, because you do not want to try gluing onto the residue of this paper or the old glue. So, try maybe a mix of acetone and just maybe just flat out sandpaper to get that off. Here's the voice coil and spider. So I smeared a little glue on both sides and it's set up fairly well, so it's a bit more rigid now. May put a little dab more on where that break was, but otherwise it's looking better now. As for the frame, or the basket, I think they call these, acetone was a great choice. Made quick work of all that adhesive. So it's down to bare metal. A little discolored here and there, but it is. All the glue is gone. I then cleaned out the rest with just some navel jelly on a damp rag. Cleaned off all the gunk for the most part, and then I smeared some of the T9 rust shield on there, so it's starting to get rusty in spots. So once I got the little bits of rust off here and there, I put the T9 on. I figured it couldn't hurt. So next up, I want to trim the foam edge just a hair. I don't want to trim it too much because that's the surface that glues down to the metal cone. So I'm not going to cut it all the way, not going to trim it all the way around because you don't need to on these corners where the mounting screws are. Just a little bit of an arc here, and in 4 places. So I'll start on trim on one side so I get that in flush, and then I'll figure out how much I need to trim on the other sides. Try to keep this thing centered while doing so. So it's just like a 1/16 of an inch, just so close. Okay, I got the edge of the cone trimmed down. I took off a little bit more than I expected, but it still should be plenty to glue down. Now the next challenge is it sticks up too high by, maybe half an inch, maybe a little less. So, and the opening is a little bit too small here as well. So one thing I can do is just cut this down. Just slice some of this right off, and then glue the top lip of this to the top of the spider. However, I think I might be able to do something a little bit more clever than that. The way this originally went is that the cone was just like molded right, or just like all one piece of paper, right on this core material up into this flange and right up into the cone. I think if I simply run these wires through, slip this down, fit in like so. So it'll look like that on the top. Now, if I put all this together and slop some glue in there, if this is off center, I got major problems. So I need to put some shims down in there. I've seen tips like using old film, like say like a roll of like negative film or something, and cut it up into strips and slide it down in there so you can pull it out when it's done. I don't have that, but I'll come up with something. Idea being, if you like take a piece of some flexible material, like imagine this heat shrink tubing, slip it down in here, you slide it down into here, and it's got to be very thin so you can get the voice coil down in there at the same time, and put them equally spaced, like 3 or 4 around here, to keep that spider centered while you're gluing it up. And then when you're done, you just pull all these out and everything should be perfect. If I was to slit this down and just use one side of it, it might be thin enough. Otherwise, I'll poke around and come up with something, I'm sure. And before I do that, let's do a little dry fit here. Let's see if I do it from the bottom like that, will everything line up right? That is looking very, very promising. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say that's going to work out perfectly. No trimming of the opening of that cone will be necessary whatsoever. So that's luck, and it's lucky for anybody else who needs to rebuild these, because this is probably the most common, certainly of the 30s, for Philco radios. Probably half of my Philco radios use this, and these cones are readily available from Mad Electronics. They're like less than $1 each, so very inexpensive solution. Now that's assuming your voice coil and your spider are still salvageable. I managed to find some fairly thick plastic and cut it up into strips and slip down 4 pieces in there, so that should keep this centered nicely. Now it'd be nice to glue the outer rim separately from the spider, but I'm going to have to do this all in one shot, so I'm going to get some glue down in here between the spider and the bottom of the cone, and get a nice bead of glue around the top and put this all down. Put that centering screw in. By the way, that'll also help to keep this centered. It's one nice thing about these Philco speakers, if you got the original spider, is there's a screw that goes right down the middle, and assuming this thing isn't too distorted or messed up, that will keep it pretty well centered as well. Alright, now it's just a matter of waiting for the glue to set up, which I imagine will take at least a few hours. While I wait for the glue to dry on the recone speaker, I want to check something out with the other speaker, the one that this radio came with. So, firing up the HP 3336A again. Let's see. I want to feed this into the antenna with some AM modulation. I want to check out the performance of this speaker because I noticed something. And I want to examine that more closely. So, oops, not what I meant to do. 1050. And this can do AM modulation and phase modulation, not FM modulation, which is kind of a drag, but even for the AM modulation, it's not internal, it's external. So, there's a BNC jack on the back for AM modulation. I've plugged it into my WaveTech 183 function generator. And last thing I need to do is enable amplitude modulation. Should remember where that is. Oh, there we go. So it's that and that. Okay. And the white light's up here. Alright. Crank this up a bit. 1001 should be about a 1 kilohertz sine wave. See if we pick that up. There it is. And I can already hear the problem I wanted to illustrate. So, aside from the background noise of the fan in this thing, sounds okay. So it gets kind of loud. It starts ringing really bad. I'm going to try putting a more complex waveform in. Maybe a little sweep. I want to see if I can hear some distortion in it. Let's see. what I'm checking out here is, I think I showed this in an earlier video, that new spider has separated from the frame, and I can hear it rattling. Hope you guys can. Let's see, if I have a flashlight to shine it down. So right there, in the upper right, there's a bit of separation there. And there might be some other areas as well. So whatever glue they use to glue this spider to the frame, it's starting to separate. When you get really loud, low frequencies like this, it starts to rumble and get distorted. I can really hear it now. And there, I put my finger on it, so rattle, no rattle. So I figure I'll keep using this speaker. But I definitely want to fix that. So I'm going to try to get some glue down in there. A toothpick or something. Use that same Eileen's tacky glue. I've managed to get a bead of glue all around the spider. I'm waiting for that to set up. But I inspected the rest of the speaker and discovered that the surround is just as loose as the spider was. Same crappy glue. So I'll let the spider set up for a bit longer, then I'll have to run a bead of glue around the rim of the whole cone as well. Meanwhile, I think the glue is set up on this sufficiently that I can give it a try. It doesn't seem to be rubbing, so it's a success. I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but the one downside to using these cones from Mad Electronics is that there's a hump on the surround. So if you're going to mount this in a cabinet where it's flush, you're going to have a problem because this foam sticks up. So you're going to have to add a little like half-inch spacer at the mounting points. So for example, here's the board from this radio, and yeah, I couldn't do this. It mushes the surround down, so I would have to add spacers in there. So if I decide that this speaker just sounds awesome compared to that one, I really want to go with it, I'll just have to get some little wood blocks, drill holes through them or something to just get that away from the frame a little bit. Alright, so I will wire this up to the radio, and I've left my function generator on the same settings I was using before, so I can use that same test pattern. And we'll hear how this one sounds. Crank it up, see that it doesn't rub and it sounds good, and eventually when I get this all glued back together, we'll do the same test on this guy. Okay, I got the soup generator fired up again with the AM modulation, and I've got the recone speaker hooked up. So let's give this a try. Well, there it is. It works. It's the important thing. The most important thing. How does it sound? Well, right away I can hear there's a problem. I think it all has to do with that spider. I can see there's another crack that's developed in it down here. And that's the side where I'm hearing some buzzing. Now, to be fair, I'm driving this pretty darn hard at a low frequency. You wouldn't typically get out of an antique radio, so. Sounds alright. But I think if I crank a lot of power at low frequencies, that spider's going to continue to deteriorate. Eventually maybe I can salvage one from another speaker and replace this one. Or I'll just try doing a modern one at some point if this one gives out completely. that too much. But find higher frequencies. The volume's up 100% right now. That is painfully loud at my end. So, yeah, I'd say this works pretty darn well. So remember, these speakers are not exactly spec to full range of 20 to 20,000 hertz by any means. I think they typically have the best response, like in the vocal range, kind of say like 500 hertz to a few kilohertz, which is exactly what this one seems to be doing well at. So right now I got my center frequency around 1500. Go for a bigger sweep width, slow it down a little, keep it low end. That's the widest you could sweep it. I was hoping I could sweep like for the whole audio range, but no, that's the widest sweep range I've got. Sine wave, triangle wave, square wave. Alright, so hook up an antenna, hear how it sounds. It's an actual radio station. Kind of figured that spider would give me some trouble with the cracks being in it. So, yeah, I mean, at low frequencies, really high power levels, it definitely starts to suffer. Turn this thing off.
Jóvenes se visten, no tenemos muchas veces problemas. Otra manera de hablar a los jóvenes es si usted va de compras con ellos. Ahí en las compras, ¿no? Se puede,
You look at his objective, which is to destroy, you ask yourself the question, well, what is his method of operation? Well, here is a good indication.
Aside from the home, sounds pretty good. That hum's not from the speaker. I get a lot of background noise around here from all this test equipment and CFLs and whatever.
All ages can explore the inner workings of all 53 Disney animated films, and even try their hand at.
Yeah, it's definitely starting to suffer at the higher volume levels. Keep the volume level down, it's alright. So hopefully this one will turn out better, and I'll keep this one as a backup and eventually maybe replace the spider on it. But for my very first reconing attempt, I don't think that's too shabby.
But we need to put them together on the 8th every 10 minutes on News Radio 780 and 105.9 FM.
Cloudy and milder, a passing shower this afternoon, a high temperature of 63. We could have some heavy rain tomorrow.
Not bad, considering it was down below freezing a few days ago.
You've got an appointment. That's a tough one. That's skill.
I'm so starstruck because when
Okay, let's give the speaker a try now. Before we do that though, let's look at the construction. Very, very similar, but there are subtle differences. Particularly the output transformer is shaped a little bit different, and so is the mounting. So on this guy, which I believe is slightly earlier, they mounted terminals on the frame. That's how the speakers on my 15DX are as well. And then that's where that loop that goes to the field coil mounts, and that's where the voice coil mounts. This guy's a bit cruder. I like the older style better. They just tack the voice coil wires right onto the output transformer, just kind of hanging here in free space. Same with that lead that goes around here. So, not exactly the most sturdy construction technique. I think it's original though. I mean, there certainly aren't any holes here like on here where they would have mounted terminals. Seems like these are probably the original rivets. I think the whole thing got mashed a bit though. Again, might have been shipping damage where this got smashed in. Alright, so let's see how it sounds. I'll flip it over. I don't want to mush the wires in the connector, so I'll just leave it hang over the edge of the workbench a little bit. Well, seems solid. Okay. Well, I've got an antenna hooked up right now, so let's try just that first. Nah, too much noise with all this equipment. Let's do the soup generator first. Sounds promising. That's volume up 100%. None of that vibration like we had before. Try lower frequencies. Yeah, much better. Really torturing the speaker right now. And the glue is holding solid. So yeah, I'll be definitely putting this back in the radio. See it dancing around there. The speaker's really vibrating. And it's actually subsonic. Just like with the other speaker, the peak efficiency seems to be around, say, 500 hertz to a couple kilohertz. Alright, now let's just listen to a plain old radio station. Huh. It's curious. So that sounds horrible, right? Well, check this out. That's plugged straight into my power strip. Nothing else that's plugged into that power strip is turned on right now, though. But a moment ago, I was trying out the radio through the PR57 isolation transformer, and there was a whole lot less noise. Quite a difference. So, as I've talked about in numerous older videos, I have horribly noisy power lines. Anyways, the noise we were hearing earlier is pretty much gone.
Learn more about Trinity's MA and Counseling Psychology program.
So, I am going to start putting this radio back together.
Has gotten out of jams when he's had to, but he's also had some very quick innings in tonight's game, which has helped save his pitch count.
What series is going on right now?
He's going to use his fastball a lot, which he has, but as soon as they've pitched and trapped.
7-7 or email.